1984 by George Orwell. Summary. From 4 Minute Books. Written by Niklas Göke and narrated by Jonathan McGinley. One-sentence summary. 1984 is the story of a man questioning the system that keeps his futuristic but dystopian society afloat, and the chaos that quickly ensues once he gives into his natural curiosity and desire to be free. Favorite quote from the author. Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past. The best books are those that tell you what you know already. Winston Smith concludes as he finally leaves through the pages of a forbidden book he'd been dying to get his hands on. In that sense, 1984 by George Orwell is indeed a great book. Most of us know the word totalitarian indicates something bad, but only after reading a dystopian classic like this will we truly understand what an absolute government might look like in practice. Orwell had been an imperial policeman in Burma, modern-day Myanmar, and fought in the Spanish Civil War. He later worked as a journalist during World War II. As such, he had seen the terrifying impact of governments with complete control, both first and second-hand in Spain, Russia, and Germany. Published in 1949, 1984 was his warning to Western nations not to succumb to then popular communist ideas, despite leaning more left than right himself. Orwell feared unquestioned socialism would ultimately escalate into a government practicing systematic oppression, and can do so within the next 35 years. The book has since become an often-quoted literary classic, taught in classrooms around the world. It is routinely praised for its important themes, strong symbolism, and in some cases, accurate vision. I recently read the book for the first time. Here are 3 lessons from this Hall of Fame piece of English literature. 1. The most powerful way to either control or empower humans is language. 2. Freedom is the ability to say what's true, to say what you think, and to make your own choices. And 3. Totalitarian governments succeed when they turn off our individuality via gaslighting. Note: since this is a historically important book, we decided to give it twice the word space of our usual reads. We hope that you think the extra length is worth it. We try to include the most relevant plot points as well as teach you some valuable lessons along the way. Let's discover some of the great ideas from 1984. Lesson 1. Language is the defining way in which humans are either empowered or controlled. The book is structured into 3 parts, and in the first, we get to know the protagonist, Winston Smith. At nearly 40 years old, and in bad physical shape, Winston is somewhat of an anti-hero. He works in the Ministry of Truth in London, which is part of Oceania, one of 3 larger superstates who are constantly at war with one another. Winston's job at the record department is to, ironically, falsify historic records. The goal is to erase everything that contradicts or makes the party, the governing political power, look bad. Originals are burned in giant furnaces, and every newspaper article gets rewritten every time the party decides a new reality is in order. One of Winston's colleagues works on the party's latest edition of the Newspeak dictionary. Newspeak is a language devised specifically to eliminate rebellious thinking at the root. Think about it. If you didn't have the vocabulary to express an idea, wouldn't that also make you less likely to think of that idea in the first place? For example, if the word freedom was erased from the English language, would Americans still understand it in the way that it was meant in the Constitution? In the book, the word free still exists, but by means of deleting many other words associated with it. Future newspeakers would only be able to use it in statements as, "This dog is free from lice." Political or intellectual freedom no longer existed, even as concepts were, therefore, of necessity, nameless. The form of language shapes how we can express ourselves, and how we can express ourselves shapes how and what we think. Therefore, language may be the single most important way to either empower or enslave humans. This concept is called linguistic relativity. It's a little overstated, but in a way, if you have no means of saying it, you can't think it. If thought corrupts language, language can also corrupt thought, Winston notes at one point. Cherish your words and be mindful of them. Lesson 2. Freedom means being able to say what's true, what you believe, and to make your own decisions. Besides altering language and falsifying history, the party also controls its citizens via more direct means. For one, everyone could be a spy, and children regularly report their parents to the thought police, a sort of Gestapo, which makes inconvenient people vanish at a moment's notice. Another theme in the book is using technology to practice mass surveillance. Every home has a telescreen, a monitor that's both recording and broadcasting at all times, and there are cameras and microphones everywhere. In a society like that, rebellion starts with little acts such as Winston writing into a diary in a corner of his apartment that's hidden from the screen. In the second part of the book, however, he takes his disobedience to the next level by starting an affair with Julia, a co-worker. At first, Winston thinks Julia is a spy, but when she gives him a love note, the two begin meeting in secret, sleeping together, and commiserating about how much they hate the party. There is, however, one key difference between them. Julia has no interest in overthrowing the party. If you keep the small rules, you can break the big ones, she observes, and as long as she can do what she wants right under the party's nose, she is happy. Winston, however, more desperately wishes for a better future, not that he could do much to bring one about. Julia's definition of freedom begins and ends with her choices, whereas Winston thinks freedom also means being able to think and say what is true and what you truly believe. Freedom is the freedom to say that 2 + 2 make 4. If that is granted, all else follows, he writes into his diary. To die hating them, the party, that is, that was the freedom. If a government allows its citizens limited means to form an identity and actualize themselves, its people still aren't free. Freedom includes permission to speak both facts and lies, to say what you think irrespective of whether it's right or wrong, and without these freedoms, all the others means significantly less.
Now, before we get into lesson number 3, if you learned something new from this video, you should download our secret list of the 12 best non-fiction books most people have never heard of. After summarizing over 1,000 books, we handpicked these 12 mind-blowing titles that fly below everyone's radar and turned them into a beautifully designed, easy-to-skim PDF. Discover your next great read in these hidden gems and stay ahead in your personal journey and of the competition. Just enter your email using the link below this video, confirm in your inbox, and we'll instantly send you the list, free of charge. Alright, let's dive into lesson number 3.
A totalitarian state wins when it can gaslight its citizens into giving up their individuality. In 2020, just as the pandemic came into full force, Julio Vincent Gambudo told us to prepare for the ultimate gaslighting. Pretty soon, as the country begins to figure out how we open back up and move forward, very powerful forces will try to convince us all to get back to normal. Of course, normal has disappeared, Gambudo warned. The future would, and probably should, look very different. But if we let greedy, marketing-savvy corporations steamroll us yet again, we'd gain nothing from the great pause we had been given. In this case, the evil Gambudo referred to was consumerism, but gaslighting, defined as manipulating someone using psychological methods into questioning their own sanity or powers of reasoning, is also what totalitarian governments use to bend citizens to their will. Just before, in the last part of the book, the inevitable happens. Winston and Julia get caught by the thought police. Winston concludes that sanity is not statistical. What he means is that there is truth and there is untruth. And if you cling to the truth, even against the whole world, you are not mad. If your government can make you think you're mad, however, it just might get you to give up the truth in favor of a lie that's more convenient for them. This is how totalitarian governments win. They get you to reject not just the truth, but any kind of individual thinking whatsoever. After their capture, Winston and Julia are separated, and both are tortured into not just compliance, but becoming mindless party drones like everyone else. As it turns out, Winston's co-worker O'Brien, whom he thought to be a fellow secret rebel, is actually a high-level inner-party member, eager to brainwash him into loyalty to the party. Having had little individuality to begin with, due to the short material lease the state kept him on, Winston is now forced to give up his last shred of self. Thanks to months of physical and psychological abuse, O'Brien doesn't just get him to lie about basic reality, such as claiming he holds up 5 fingers when he's only holding up 4, but also to pretend Oceania has always been at war with the same enemy, when in fact, telescreens frequently announce differing warring factions. The ultimate gaslighting, however, happens when he makes Winston doubt reality altogether, and, as such, the importance of thinking for himself. If he thinks he floats off the floor, and if simultaneously think I see him do it, then the thing happens, Winston muses. It doesn't really happen. We imagine it. It is hallucination. What knowledge have we of anything, save through our own minds? All happenings are in the mind. Whatever happens in all minds truly happens. This is Winston's final admission of defeat. After all, if the party can rewrite history as it sees fit, it can dictate whether what happens in all minds, and therefore what truly happens. When he returns to the real world, he is happy to drink the same gin he has always been drinking, sit at the same bar he's always been sitting in, and no longer cares about expressing himself in any way whatsoever. Not with Julia, nor in the diary, not even through rebellious thoughts. Deep down, he still knows the state propaganda is nothing but lies, but from now on, he's happy to go along with it, no longer strong enough to resist. When other people gaslight us, it's annoying and sad. When our governments do it, it's dangerous, an immediate sign to take a stand and cling to the truth with all we've got. Always think twice about what your government does and says. Big Brother is watching.
Hey, this is Nick, the founder of 4-Minute Books, and if you learned something new from this book summary, I'm sure this next one will also be right up your alley with new and insightful ideas. Click on over and let's keep learning.